Mark, I'm refreshing
folks,
like crazy, but I got a loop here. What do you have?
I've texted the indictment to you guys, but let me tell you, again, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I normally wouldn't read off of Twitter, but their reporters are top-notch on this. Here are the names they say they've seen in the indictment: President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, Chesbrough, Jenna Ellis, Sean Still, David Schaefer. Donald Trump and 18 allies indicted in the indictment, and I've sent it to you guys.
Yep, and thank you very much. And let's start.
Well, the question, I guess, is anybody going to flip? I saw Jenna Ellis in there. I know she and Trump don't get along too well anymore. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, Mark Meadows is interesting because there's been a lot of suspicion and concern in Trump world that he has flipped. He's part of this indictment, according to what I've seen so far. I'm looking at it now. State of Georgia. I'm seeing if there are any other names on here I didn't read to you before.
98 pages long.
Yeah.
And, going through some of these people, Jeffrey Clark, he was an assistant attorney general, somewhat mid-level. Kenneth Chesbrough, he's the one who wrote the memo, a lawyer in New York who I believe just wrote a memo about possibilities and hypotheticals regarding January 6th and contesting an electoral vote. I'm sorry, Senator, go ahead.
Yeah, the one that sort of jumped out to me was David Schaefer. He was the state chair of the Republican Party in Georgia, which, again, I've known David for many, many years and actually talked a lot with him throughout this process. And David was very, very public about just, following the rules and staying in line with, actually with Governor Kemp in many cases and tracking down everything. But to see him thrown in on this was a little bit of a surprise, and one that you sort of raise as well as is this someone they're trying to squeeze? Because I didn't necessarily see David as sort of part of Trump world.
Defendant Donald John Trump. This is the indictment itself. The introduction lost the United States presidential election. It's a political statement, right? Held on November 3rd, 2020, one of the states he lost, Georgia. Trump and the other defendants charged in this indictment refused to accept that Trump lost, and they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. That conspiracy contained a common plan and purpose to commit 2 or more acts of racketeering activity in Fulton County, Georgia, elsewhere in the state of Georgia. Racketeering is a kind of a catch-all, the RICO statute. It is obviously too broad. I'm reading this right now. It reminds me of Jack Smith's second indictment. Overtly political, partisan statement after partisan statement. And so far, not impressed, but we're all reading it as we speak to each other.
41 counts: false statements, solicitation of violation of oath, conspiracy to commit election fraud, false statements, perjury. Sidney Powell is one of the people indicted here in count 1. Everyone will know her as one of Donald Trump's attorneys from the post-election period.
Solicitation of the Vice President of the United States. Now, this again, the overtly political nature of this, corruptly solicited the Vice President of the United States to violate the United States Constitution and federal law by unlawfully rejecting the Electoral College votes. You're allowed in America. You're allowed to talk to the Vice President of the United States if you're the President of the United States with a view that may or may not ultimately be proven correct by the Supreme Court. People disagree about the Constitution's meaning all the time. We have 5-4 decisions all of the time. People disagree about laws like the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and what it means. They debate this stuff, and you're allowed to debate this stuff. Unlawful breach of election equipment in Georgia and elsewhere. Now, this is perhaps new. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, how is a charge that the president tried to inappropriately influence or corrupt the vice president have anything to do with Georgia law? I mean, this is, if there's any charge there, it's a federal charge. It's not a state charge. This is a fishing expedition. This is just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Donald Trump that maybe wasn't covered by previous indictments, but clearly not again, as I mentioned earlier, just a weaponization of the criminal justice system for obvious political purposes, and it's another bad night for America and for our criminal, for our judicial system tonight.
Unlawful breach of election equipment. Now that sounds like, wow, unlawful breach of election equipment. What do they have? Well, this is what it gets down to. Members of the enterprise stole data, including ballot images, voting software, and personal voter information. Then it was distributed to other people. Now, that actually does not say what it says it says. That's not actually breaching, that's not manipulating election equipment. Look, I think the whole thing is a joke. We have days to go through this. What about some of those names? Sidney Powell is not a surprise. The only surprise name, let's see here, would be Mr. Schaffer. And tell us again who that is, please.
David Schaffer is the Republican chairman of the state of Georgia. And as I said, he made lots of public comments, was out there writing op-eds and the like, talking about how Georgia election law functions. He had a program that they were working at the state level to track down, all the things that you look for in an election. People who voted who, were no longer living in the state, people who were deceased, people who had changed address. I mean, all the routine things you look at with respect to an election to make sure there wasn't in a close election like that, whether there was enough votes in question that could throw this race into a rerun. And that's what Schaffer was focused on. He made it very, very clear. I find it just very, very disturbing that he would be listed in this, in doing something that every chairman of every committee, every Republican or Democratic committee would do as a routine course to check the validity of an election.